Assalamu alaikum. Lisa, so tell us who you are.
Walaikum salam. My name is Lisa Vogl. I am the CEO of Droplets of Mercy USA. I am the founder of Zayla Collection, a nonprofit fashion brand that supports single mothers, domestic violence survivors, refugees, and widows. I am an advocate against domestic violence because I'm a survivor myself. I'm a mother of four children, um, and a wife.
Yes, and you also are a convert to Islam as well, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
Most
so that's part
important.
of your, right. So that's part of your journey, and you are in a blended family now. Okay, great. Did I miss out anything? Anything else that you'd like to say about who you are and what you do?
My life is always hectic. It's with a house of four children, one of them being a 1.5-year-old. Uh, but yeah, I'm just that's who I am, and for me, like my advocacy as far as DV, it's my life's mission, and but we can talk about that.
Yeah,
So,
okay. Well, first of all, I want to welcome you and I want to thank you for being here because you've had an extremely challenging past, and it's not easy to go back to a time that was quite dark and painful and to talk about it. That takes courage. So, first of all, I want to thank you for being here. And then I'd like to start. Let's rewind. Okay, so how long ago did you get married? Regarding your first marriage.
almost 12 years now. My oldest just turned 11. So I was like pregnant right away. So that's so that's kind of always how I remember how long ago it was. But it was a long time ago. It almost to some degree because my life has, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, mashallah, um, turned to 180 from what I was dealing with 11 years ago.
Hmm. So, how did you meet your ex? Like, how was your process of getting married?
As a reaver, it wasn't exactly easy to find a spouse. So I went on a marriage website. We didn't have like the apps at the time. And I went with just pure intentions of wanting to get married as a new revert. A lot of people kind of assume that I must have found Islam through him, and I was actually already a revert.
Okay,
And
so
so
you went through this married matrimonial site. Did you, I believe that you spoke to him for 2 months, right?
it was very quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in that process, did you have this communication by yourself, or did you have an appointed wali that was a liaison between the two of you, kind of vetting the guy?
By myself, I didn't really have a brother to kind of look out for me. So there is so much wisdom behind having a wali who can ask those hard questions because when we're in the middle of it, we're often blind and not seeing red flags. That's certainly not to put any blame on anybody that was fooled by an abuser because they're very manipulative, they're very charming. So even if someone did have a Wally, it doesn't mean that someone may not end up into abuse, unfortunately.
Right. It just like helps mitigate any
It
possible
helps.
error, but it's not
Definitely.
going to be foolproof,
Yeah,
right?
it definitely helps though.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if you just if we could just pause there for a second, I'm curious to explore, given that you've grown so much over these last, what is it, 15 years now? No, is it 15
Something like
years?
that. I think I've
Yeah.
been a reader for maybe 13 years, something like that. I lost
Okay.
track. Yeah.
Right. So I'd like to, if you could go back to that time where you're seeking marriage, how would you have done that differently in terms of your getting married process?
I think it's the questions I would have asked. We're so focused on how um, if they practice Islam, if they pray, if they do if they fast, if they give zakat. But I think that we don't look into the character of people as much. And I think also the time frame, people can only have a mask on for so long. You're going to start to see some red flags. Um, So I think looking back, any advice that I'd give to other sisters, it's to not rush into anything. And if the brother seeking you is not willing to meet your family and do everything the right way, that's something to be alarmed about. Yeah.
Mhm.
But again,
So,
like I want to be very clear. Like they can do all of this, and that doesn't mean that they may not be hiding as an abuser because you want to be very careful to not say, well, if you would have done this, then you wouldn't have led it into an abusive marriage. No, the blame is always on the abuser regardless. But these are just some pieces of advice to help um, reveal those red flags.
so if you could go back, would you just spend more time with him? Like have him hang around your
I would
family
have asked
more?
harder questions. I wouldn't have thrown softball questions at him. I would have had hard questions at him. Uh, but I also, looking back, I don't think I was this healed version of myself. I think that if I, was a little bit more, I loved myself more and I was more confident and I didn't need to get married to necessarily fill a void. I think that I would have off bat taken my time. I'm speaking for myself. I'm always telling people, make sure that you feel happy and content with your life as is, and the person should add value to your life, not try to fill a void. And looking back, that's what was happening in my life. He was filling a void, so I rushed it. I moved forward, and yeah, and it ended up being very, very physically abusive, emotionally abusive, financially abusive, anything you can think of. It
Mhm.
is what I was put through. But alhamdulillah, I look at it like I went through it for a reason, because I truly want to help other women to never have to go through this.
Mhm. Within your marriage, how long was it until you saw the signs of, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into?
Signs started popping up right away. The first sign was like I forget on the timeline because honestly there's some parts of me that like will like forget and then all of a sudden remember. I don't know if it's like a trauma response with me, but it was like very short afterwards. We had already been married like a month or two or something like that. And he had moved into my home. And I went out for a jog and I came back and he threw like all of the Pakistani clothes that I had in my closet because I had like purchased a bunch for like going to weddings and just like special occasions. They were just like very pretty garments. And he's like, I don't want you wearing this. And it wasn't like it was a case of, not that I would make it right to do it, but it wasn't like this, oh, it's super revealing clothing. It was just, he didn't want me to wear it. It was a sense of control at the time. And I didn't really see it as a red flag. I was just very hurt and upset that he would give away my things like that. Um, but that's what abuse is. It's power and control. And it was the first sign of it. However, that's not something to get divorced over. You might fight over it or it might cause an issue, but you move on, after that. And so that was like the very first sign compared to what he would do, that was extremely subtle. Um, the second, after that, it would be places like I can't go out for coffee here. I can't spend $5. I can't the financial control was very quick. Um, and I had given up my income and everything. So that's what abusers typically want to do. They want to take you under their full control. So they have to, you're under their wing. It's not to provide for you and to take care of you, it's to control you. There's a very big difference when the man is a provider to take care of you versus using the money to control you. Complete difference. His was a means of control. Um, and to tell you just to the extreme, I slept on blow up beds throughout two pregnancies because he would not purchase a bed for me. And we're talking about a man that had six figures income. So the first part of it, he was still going through medical school as a physician assistant, and he hadn't completed his boards yet. So for the first part, very, very few months, he didn't have a lot of money. After that, that changed. And even when he was making well above six figures, I wasn't even allowed to have a mattress. So financial abuse is real. Um,
Could I just interject there? So, when these situations arose, and were you able to ask him about it, or did you have a sense of fear and tension that I've got to now speak to him about this? Like, how did those discussions go?
I can't speak for other like victims and survivors, but I feel like we could all relate to this is that it's not even when I'm talking about it, it's so obvious, right? When you're in it, it's not because it's not like it's just an overnight thing that as soon as you're married, they just become this monster. It's like this slowly progressive way of treating you. And every day they kind of break you down like just a little bit. And so you don't really see that you're in the cycle. You just think that it's a bad argument at that moment. You don't see that you're in this abusive cycle because they've slowly taken your spirit away and your self-confidence away. And like almost your ability to recognize reality is taken away. Because when I talk about it, it sounds absolutely ridiculous that I couldn't even have a bed. You know what I mean? Uh, so yeah, you're not your mind is in a fog when you're in narcissistic abuse. You really truly can't think clearly.
Okay, so you mentioned the financial abuse. So I'm assuming that you had no autonomy in terms of how you spend your money, you had to ask him for money, etc.
I had my own card. Like it's not like I had a card to the bank account, but I would definitely hear it if I spent more than $5 that I should, you know? So it was everything was based off of fear and constant flight or fight survival mode, you
So
know?
being like constantly monitored all the time.
Yeah, you never knew. And one day he was perfectly happy, like in super nice. The next day he might come home as like a raging monster. It was like you never knew.
hmm Are you comfortable talking about the physical abuse aspect? If you're not, it's okay.
I've talked about it probably more than I can count. So sometimes I start crying and memories trigger me, but I'm definitely comfortable about it. And I made a conscious decision to speak about it because as I was mentioning earlier, like there should and if someone chooses to keep it private, that's of course their right. But I choose to speak about it because I will not take 1 ounce of shame on this for somebody else's actions. So that's why I talk about it.
Okay. So I'm just trying to create a clearer picture of what your domestic life was. The reason being mostly because there are probably women who are listening to you speak right now, and they might, in a way, undermine their own situation. And just to hear somebody else echo and say, this situation is an abusive situation, might shed some light on their own personal reality.
Well, I think in order to maybe give clarity to women that don't see it because they're in it, and they don't, and just like I didn't recognize it, it's more the non-physical that needs to be spoken about. Because if I just tell you he hit me, well, it validates it. It validates the abuse. It's like, well, that's obvious that that's abuse. Someone put their hands on you, which he did. And anything from being strangled to head smashed in the wall to while I'm holding my baby, I'm getting hit. I did actually suffer a miscarriage as well because two of the pregnancies, um, he was physically abusive to me. Thankfully, my second child came out very healthy. Alhamdulillah. The third one that I was pregnant for did result in a miscarriage. Um, but I talk about the emotional, mental abuse because people brush that under the rug as if it's not detrimental. And I can only speak for myself, but that's what damaged me. And that's where I needed the healing. Um, because people don't sit and say, that's abuse, you know? Um, Whereas that can really break your soul.
You mean the psychological aspect, like how you were made to feel?
Anything and everything, like everything was my fault. Like when I like he is a textbook narcissist. Like, and I can laugh about it now, the things that he says to me now. To this day, he'll be super nice and then go off on me, and I can laugh about it now because it's just like, okay, please get help, you know? Um, but it's when you're in it, like it really breaks you down because they what it felt like they took all your power away. And now I can think about it and talk about it and almost laugh at it because I took my power back and I took my life back. And that's the one thing a narcissist hates is that when you take control of your own life and he knows he has like he can't even get to me anymore. And that's what bothers him the most.
As you know, people sometimes say, what's the big deal? Like, just leave. Like, why don't you just leave? And as you know, it's a very complex situation, and leaving isn't that easy for many reasons, right? Now, as far as I know about your background, you come from quite a like a self-assured background. You had a wonderful upbringing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as if you had many opportunities in your life. You have like a functional background. It's not like you were some kind of oppressed woman who was accustomed to being treated poorly.
Yeah. So I did and still, face it here and there. I see like little triggers pop up, but I have to check myself and always yelling. I definitely have did have abandonment issues from my father. He was very much involved in my life and was a good man and well respected and as far as opportunities and upbringing, best schools, best neighborhoods, um alhamdulillah, like all the privileges as a child, not so much when I was like really young, but adolescence and teenage years, I had a lot given to me. My mom was great growing up, but like any family, there's issues, and my father was not always he definitely was not there emotionally. And so I had some abandonment issues, but I know what you're getting at as far as I didn't have this rough life, fending for myself. And just, I had a lot of privileges, to be very blunt. So I was equipped with a college education, best schools growing up. Um, but when you're in abuse, all that's out the window. You can be the best surgeon, and have everything at your fingertips. An abuser will take control over you mentally and really change who you are. Now, I was in Florida, and Florida is not in favor of women. I don't care what anybody tells you. The court system does not look out for women. It's a man's world in the court system. And when I left, I had no money, like nothing. And uh, thankfully, I was able to get custody outside of court because the evidence was so stacked against him. So I was able to sign off, he was able to sign off custody, but the money wasn't there. The minute I went for that divorce, he cut off every single penny, and I had to figure it out. Um, and so there's so much more to why doesn't she just leave? But if you just look at the money alone, a woman that gives up her career, that, has to take care of her children, you want her to just jump into the workforce and be able to pay for everything and move for everything. Like the money alone is difficult for a woman to go and rebuild her life with the snap of the fingers. And then the man is now using the kids in court against you and trying to make your life miserable. There were many times when I was like, let me just go back, it would be easier. So many women have that thought that I would rather get beaten than have my children taken away from me. So you go through this, like, what's best? Thankfully, I had reached a point that no matter what, I wasn't going to leave. I wasn't going to go back because I left many times and went back. And studies show between like 7 and 10 or 11 times women go back. And not everybody makes it out because um, there's a lot of abusers that will result in deaths because they're not somebody that's going to sit and control themselves. If they did, they wouldn't touch you in the first place.
Mhm. So, would you also say that when you say that it's kind of takes over your mind and your sense of self, that like it eats away at your self-esteem or anyone's self-esteem who's in that position, that they don't have like the strength to
I
make
lost
any.
who I was completely. Like I didn't even know who I was. Like I couldn't look in the mirror and wouldn't be able to tell you who I was. Like I lost every part of me.
And you
Um,
didn't tell anyone, right? Your family didn't know anything.
no, they knew nothing.
Did your
Um,
friends know?
uh, a few people knew. Um, I wouldn't say like they were there for me, but then looking back, like, and I don't want to blame them either. Like they didn't exactly give the best advice or anything. There were people that were there for me later on, but once I made calls and finally decided I'm telling people, there were a lot of people that stepped up.
How did you experience when you were in that situation? How did it affect your dean?
Thankfully, I never lost prayer. I never took off my hijab. I looked back and made mistakes a lot afterwards. And I always ask Allah to forgive me for going off the wrong path because I did not stay on the perfect straight path. But I never lost my deen. As far as, I never lost my faith, my iman. I shouldn't say deen because I did go off the path a little bit. Um, a lot of times people are always like, well, I'm surprised that, you didn't lose your Islam. And I'm like, well, I didn't choose Islam for him. So why would I leave Islam for him? I was able to recognize that my conviction and my faith was enough to know that Islam had nothing to do with him, and he certainly is not representative of a good Muslim or Islam. So, alhamdulillah, I had that in my heart.
Alhamdulillah. So you said that there were several times when I think you left and came back. What was that tipping point where you said that that was the moment when I just decided that's it, no matter what, that I am officially done?
I had launched I co-founded, I should say, so it wasn't just me, my fashion brand, Verona, and alhamdulillah, it had its own success by the grace of Allah. But I was just starting it at that time, and I worked so hard for it. And the night before, he, and I'm running off of zero sleep because I was never given any help with two infants, a 1.5-year-old and like a newborn. And he's like waking me up to change my Adam's, my younger child, diaper. And I'm like, no, you change it. Like I was exhausted. Like I blurted out, you change it. Like because of that, it resulted in all kinds of abuse. He took my computer and he smashed it on the ground the next morning. And I just broke down crying, and I'm just like, he wants to take everything from me. So it was something that was like I had worked for and it was a part of me, and he wanted to just take it away from me. So that was my tipping point because I felt like I had finally like worked for something back for myself and he wanted to take it away. When he at the time he was still at he had not he had to like go back into IT, and then now he's back in the medical field. At that time, he was working like later hours from like 2 to 10. I waited until he went to work, packed up everything. I took, and by the way, I still hear from him to this day, and then I can laugh about it. I took whatever cash was in the house, and I went from Texas to Florida.
Wow.
So
I'm
I
just taking
finally,
that all in. It's like a movie. It really is. But the thing is
it's
that it's people's reality. This is what people
that's
go
what I was
through.
just about to say. It's not unreal. Like and I hate to say it, my story is not uncommon. It's very common. It's common in our community. Uh, like I don't care what anyone wants to say that no, it happens with Muslims and a lot of Muslims. It doesn't mean that there's the stereotype of Muslim men, and I'm reiterating that. No, I just want to stop pretending like it's not happening in our Muslim community because it is. And I don't care who gets mad at me for that. They just don't want to talk about reality. It happens in white families, in African American families, in Desi families. It happens in all cultures, all religions, and yes, happens in Muslim families too.
So
So
when you got into the car and you started driving, what thoughts and feelings went through you?
I was in a daze, but I had had something in me that I'm like, I am not going back. And I knew in my heart that I was done. And I think that every survivor will always remember the first time that they were hit, and every survivor will always remember the moment they said no more. And I'll always remember that.
And where did you go?
I made it into the border of across the border. I think it's Louisiana. Um, got a hotel room. And it took like 2 days to drive from Texas to Florida. I went into a friend's home, one of the friends that I called, and like I mentioned, the minute I decided to tell people, they were like, "Get in the car, go. We'll be there for you." And a lot of people stepped up, a lot of people. So as much as it's prevalent in our community, just as any other community, there's so many. I would also say because I'm in the Muslim community, I got a lot of extra help that I think non-Muslims wouldn't have gotten because the community was here to step up. So I had a lot of help too.
That's an enormous blessing that you had that
Yeah.
support. Many people don't have that support.
Yeah.
I recall you mentioning that he said to you that he would be willing to make some changes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then could you tell us about it? And then there was almost like a trial period or something and it didn't work out.
He had always gone, like, we had constantly gone to counselors and imams, and then he would just start the crocodile tears about like his childhood. And I'm not trying to be insensitive when I say that, but the problem is that he was always the victim. Like, and I'm like, you just hit me, and now we're talking about your childhood. Like, you need to go work on that, like in a different session. But every single time, it was about him and his childhood, and he wanted to make himself the victim and feel pity for him and bad for him. When you are a grown man, you are well aware that abuse is not okay because if that were the case, then I could go on and abuse somebody too, because he abused me. Um, so it was always this sob story like, I'm so sorry, you're right, I'm gonna change. But that's the way it always worked. It was this like cycle, and I didn't even know about the cycle of abuse until afterwards. It's the honeymoon stage, turns into the abuse, turns into the remorseful stage, because when you go into the remorseful stage, you forgive him. Okay, I believe you, and then it goes back to the honeymoon stage and everything's fine, and then something else happens. People think about abuse as if it's just this like terror all day, every day, and that becomes a little bit easier to leave. It's a lot more clear. But what messes with your mind is that it goes into the nice stages, and he's nice, and he's treating me like a princess today, you know, and then it goes to abuse. So that's why women get trapped in the cycle, and then each time that within that cycle, they get broken down a little bit more, and they get sucked in more. So when I did make it to Florida, I refused to get on a call with him. And one of the brothers that was helping me, it was a married couple, and the brother got involved. He got on a phone with him. He's like, "You're not talking to her." And then he promised him that he would go and get anger management, um, which, was he honestly, like, I do think looking back, he has some type of like bipolar or something. But it was just for show. It was just for the agreement, right? Um, and I knew that he wasn't going to change over time because he was still having rages over the phone. 6 months, 9 months later, he did agree to pay for my rent and give me a small amount weekly. Um, he met all those expectations. He went to anger management, but because the rages were still happening and I was getting stronger and more aware of the abuse, being physically separated from him, I started, to realize this is not normal and this is not the way to live. So I finally went for the divorce, and there's actually so much more that I have decided never to share publicly. Um, I just decided to talk about what I felt was necessary. But believe me, I had to be smart about it and I set myself up financially. I got him, and I don't care if anyone calls me manipulative or not. I was looking out for a roof over my head for my children. I got him to pay for a deposit on an apartment and set myself up, and then I went for the divorce because I knew that he was going to cut everything off, and that's exactly what happened. So I
Mm.
say that with full like feeling like to this day, I believe wholeheartedly that was the right thing to do because I knew he would not do the right thing to protect his children with a roof over his head.
Absolutely. You were just trying to take care of yourself and your children. I think
Yeah.
anyone would do that.
Yeah.
You know, Lisa, it amazes me that you can talk about this and without fear. Like, I don't sense any fear from you because there are many people I know who have changed their names or they don't want their voice to be heard or they don't, they're so terrified to speak because they fear their ex-husband. And you just speak so openly. Tell me about that.
It took a long time to get there though. It was years afterwards, after leaving the abuse, that I decided to talk about. And believe me, I've been threatened for the defamation, all of that. And I'm like, well, in order for defamation, it has to be false. That's first and foremost in the court. So, would you like me to show the bruise photos and the text messages, because it's true? I've also never said your name publicly either. So my goal is to not ruin your life, and the people that knew about you already knew you were abusive. So, and someone has a right to talk about their name publicly. That's their right. I chose not to because I didn't feel it was necessary for my cause. He's not a public figure. Um, so the man lives a free life without it really actually affecting him. It really came down to no, this is something that needs to be spoken about. But I used to be shaking when he would threaten me, and I'm like, you know what? This is what happened. This is the truth. Allah knows. Why am I scared of this man? Am I scared to the point where I think that he would come and harm me? No, I don't believe that. He'll threaten me, and he threatens me with court all the time. He was never an abuser that was like premeditated. Like he was never, and I want to be very careful to put that out there for any woman that doesn't think that because is still that safety measure that someone has to be very careful with that. But with my situation, I was never fearful of him being premeditated. That's not who he is. He's a he snaps in the moment and can't control himself. That was the type of abuser he was. Um, but he definitely sits and harasses me by text and put the phone down, walk away, I don't care.
So, Lisa, you were saying that more than the physical aspects, it was the psychological abuse that really broke you. Can you tell us more about this post divorce phase or when you separated from him of how you came back into yourself? What was that coming to see yourself again and taking care of yourself?
It's a long journey. So the way I'm talking about it now was not who I was even 5 years ago. Um, I've completely, healed. I shouldn't say completely because there's definitely healing I still need to do, but it's night and day. Um, I used to be shaking when I would get his text messages. I used to literally shake thinking, oh my God, he's going to take me to court for this. He's going to take me to court for this. Um, I think it was the financial empowerment, and that's actually why I launched my nonprofit that really gave me the confidence because I'm like, okay, you want to hire an attorney? I can too. Bring it. You know what I mean? You start to get, when you can stand on your own 2 feet and they can no longer harm you through the court system because, uh, you start to really like seep through the BS and you're like, "Yeah, I'm not afraid of you anymore." And it's so liberating. It's so liberating to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and not let someone harm you like that anymore and not even care. You're like, you have to answer to Allah.
But tell me about this. How did that strength grow? You mentioned in terms of becoming more functional with your work, so that's the work aspect. But I'm sure there were other, if you could think of like different quadrants in your life, of what were those things? Just it might be motivating to others out there who are just so rock bottom right now, you know?
Honestly, like time heals, and getting yourself back and your passions back and focusing on what makes you happy. And um I knew that in order to be a better mom, and what I mean by better mom is making sure I'm emotionally present. I had to heal and I had to heal for them so I could emotionally be there for my children. Because if I'm broken, like how am I going to take care of others? So my children were, you know, and always will be like my big reasoning why I need to always be a healed version of myself. Time is honestly like the only thing I can say that really helped me because you heal the more you're out of it and the more you get yourself back and focusing on the things that you love. And uh, I also recommend to talk to people that you trust that will listen with an opening ear, a non-judgmental ear. Um, and if that means like therapy or counseling, or if it means like having, best friends around you that can be a sense of like to be your rock, I recommend that. I would cry so much. I've cried so many tears, I can't even like think straight. Like think about how much I've cried. But the only thing I can say is time. And it's not an easy road at all. It's this like really rocky road in the beginning, like really rocky. I would say post-separation abuse feels worse than the abuse itself. At least that's what myself and so many other survivors have said, that it's the post-separation abuse that's the hardest, but that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Like Allah brings ease.
Why is it worse?
Because they use the children as pawns, and that's how to get to a mother is through their children, and they use the kids.
Lisa, what does coming into selfhood look like with regards to remarriage? Like, did you have apprehension about remarriage given everything that you've been through?
Um, yes, but like yeah, I did. And even afterwards when I was going back into the like marriage scene, I definitely was not looking for the right qualities because um it was like the bar was so low, like the bar was so low that everybody looked amazing afterwards. Like, and I'm not even joking. So, like, I'm like, oh my God, he was nice to me. So it's like trying to rewire your brain to be like, the bare minimum's supposed to be there. You know what I mean? And then you look for the qualities and the compatibility and the dean, you know, after that. Like it should be a like no discussion, bare minimum of that should already be there. And everybody looked great afterwards. And so that was the challenge I had to overcome afterwards.
So did you trust your self-judgment? Like, did you come into that trust, self-trust of, you know what, I can make a good decision. I can choose a good man.
No, I was way too of a trusting person. Like, it took time to actually recognize that, to like be like, I need to take a step back and really look at this person. And I became that person. Um, but not off bat. No, I, looking back, I was making poor judgment on who people were. I'd eventually find out and I'm like, okay, bye. But it didn't come easy to me because like I said, like everybody looked great afterwards.
You are now remarried. You have a blended family. You are
Mhm.
happily married, mashallah. So, was there a wali or somebody involved to, because as you were saying, it seems as if you couldn't really make good enough judgments because the bar was so low. But it
That
sounds like
was
you
right
did.
afterwards. That
Oh,
was
that was
right
right
after.
afterwards.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so then how did it, tell me about now when you've now chosen this man to marry your current
I
husband.
was a completely different person when he came into my life, and subhanAllah, like I needed to get there before Allah brought my husband into my life. And that's why I believe Allah made me wait because I had to emotionally get there. Um, and the process was very different. Um, and I was a very different person too. So I was actually asking those hard questions. You know what I mean? I was putting it all on the table. I was a completely different person, and that's why I believe I had to wait for this man to come into my life, for my husband to come in my life.
Tell me, sorry, what are these hard questions? I heard you mention even earlier.
You
I would
want to
ask
talk
him
about
the hard.
finances, what kind
Yeah.
of dad you're going to be, like what's the gender roles that you expect of me? Like, who is there the idea of the man of the house? You know what I mean? We actually do have a bit of a, even though I have a career and I do all this, I actually am a little bit more of a conservative wife and mentality, and he comes from a conservative background. So we do have gender roles in our household, but there's the respect, there's the love, there's the care. You can have the gender roles and have a conservative marriage while there's still respect, kindness, and love. He's a great role model for my children. Um, that's something we butt heads on a lot because it's not easy to like, because I'm the mom that wants to protect my kids and he's the authoritarian. Like the kids have zero fear of me. So that's always the hardest, as any marriage is. Um, but the process was very different. Met his family, went through the entire process, took our time, got a wali involved, and we had the uncomfortable conversations. So it was done properly.
That's beautiful. Mashallah. I'm so happy for you.
Thank
Really,
you.
really. It's so heartwarming to hear that you had a second chance and a positive second marriage, mashallah. So Lisa, you now have the mic. What would you say to women out there?
Love yourself. And I think like to know that uh, you deserve to be happy and safe in your own home, emotionally and physically.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you so much. I wish you and your family all the best. May Allah grant you beautiful, beautiful experiences moving on ahead.
I mean, thank you so much.